Okay. Digimon Adventure 2020. Yes, I'm still holding the Metal Garurumon toy. I haven't been holding it for a long period of time. I'm just filming this at the same time as my 2 cents on Digimon Adventure. Just wanted to get that out of the way. I don't want you guys to think I'm... Well, I don't mind if you guys think I'm crazy. I don't want you guys to think that I'm crazy in the not fun ways. Though, is hanging on to this toy for like a whole day bad crazy or good crazy? I don't even know. Whatever, I'm moving on. Digimon Adventure 2020, as it's being called, is the latest Digimon series. And it is a straight reboot of the original Digimon Adventure. I watched the first episode. I did not like it. I liked things about it. And I'll talk about those things. But I did not like it. And I'm going to keep this review short and sweet and focus on just a few points because this is just the first episode. It's barely set up. It has barely set up the premise of the show. And I don't want to I don't want this video to devolve into a rant about speculations I have about where the show is going. I just want to focus on the facts, if that makes sense. But I didn't like this show. First of all, say what you want about Digimon Adventure Try. They opened every single episode of that show once it was broken down into episodes because it was movies. It was a series of movies originally. They opened every single episode of that show with a beautiful redux of the original theme for Digimon, which obviously I discovered years after the fact because I watched Digimon dubbed first. But it's called Butterfly. It's a fantastic song. And I like the version from Try better than the original. And it's there, it's ready-made, they have it, and they don't open the reboot of Digimon Adventure with a version of Butterfly? What? Why? And that's not to say that the new theme is bad or anything, don't get me wrong, it's not. It has similar themes to it, and granted, there is a different, more sentimental reason why I wish they had gone with Butterfly here. But the opening of this show is nothing but a nostalgia bomb. It shows every single one of Agumon's evolutions all the way up to War Greymon. But they can't open it with Butterfly? That's garbage. So first of all, there's one misstep already. But then, and I promise after I talk about these 2 points, just 2 points. There's other stuff I dislike about the show, but it's primarily these 2 points. And I promise after I talk about them, I'm going to talk about some stuff that I liked in this episode. But I didn't like the characters, what we saw of them, and I didn't like the digital world. First of all, and I mentioned this in my 2 cents on Digimon Adventure. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a link to it up in the little thingy. Go watch it first, because I'm going to be referring to stuff that I mentioned in that video, in this video, and the context will help you. But just to paraphrase, in that video I talked about how the characters grow over time without you even realizing they're undergoing growth. It just feels so natural. And their dynamics and their reactions to things always feel so realistic and deep. And also the digital world, despite being very simplistic in its design, because there were cost-cutting measures taken in the show, always felt distinct and memorable and cool and alien in a way that was also familiar. It felt like a real place you could go that was just a little off. Let's actually start with the digital world, because it's the easier one to talk about. I hate the way the digital world looks in this show. I'll put some footage of it up here. I might actually do stills instead of footage, I don't know, because Japanese footage gets claimed super hard. Because it's hard to articulate why I don't like it. First of all, it doesn't feel like a mirror of our world. Like, you can see the city, I'm assuming it's Tokyo, because I'm pretty sure this episode took place in Tokyo. You can see the city kind of there, but there's not much of a sense of scale to it, right? And then there's weird digital things floating around. It feels more like when the kids went onto the internet, and I'm going to call it Digimon the movie. It was really, what was that one called? Our War Game? It was one of the OVAs. I'm going to call it Digimon the movie, though, because that's what I saw it as first. It feels more like when the kids went into the literal internet in Digimon the movie than it does when they went into the digital world, which in this new version of the show is apparently just on the internet. But in the original show, and this has always been the concept of the digital world, this has always been how the digital world worked. It's always like derived from information on the net, but it's its own place. It's its own physical dimension that's parallel to ours. It's not literally on the internet. And yet this version of the digital world felt more like, again, when the kids went onto the internet. Well, the Digimon did, and then Ty and Matt did. Not everybody, but the Digimon went onto the internet, the literal internet in Digimon the movie. It didn't feel like a distinct place. There was nothing interesting or memorable about it. It felt so lazy. Like, the pitch for this show, from what I understand, was that it's supposed to be Digimon Adventure, but without any of the cost-cutting shit, and a more, like, cohesive from the start story, more modern storytelling conventions. But if you're trying to make Digimon Adventure but better, you can't go lazy on the design for the digital world. It's just, you can't do that. It's called Digimon Adventure. Part of the point is them adventuring through the digital world. If it doesn't feel like a distinct place, they can't do that. And it doesn't feel like a distinct place. It doesn't feel like a place that I would want to wander through. Which is the point. The digital world is supposed to feel like a place that you could actually imagine yourself going to and wandering around and having an adventure. Right? Right? And this one just doesn't. I also don't like the characters in this. First of all, we've only really met Ty and Izzy. And I don't like what they did with Izzy. I get what they were going for. He's very nervous around people, but he gets really comfortable when tech is involved, and that's kind of how Izzy was. But Izzy wasn't really nervous around people the way this new Izzy is. He was just kind of awkward around them because he treated people like tech, right? So he didn't always interact with people in a way that they could immediately understand. I kind of headcanon him as on the spectrum, right? This new Izzy feels like generic nervous kid archetype. He didn't feel like Izzy to me. Maybe he will as the series progresses, but he didn't feel like Izzy to me. Ty felt like Ty about halfway through the show, because that's actually my biggest problem with this episode, because it is trying to avoid those older storytelling conventions and start the kids on the main plot immediately instead of letting them wander around and get their bearings and react to the situation like real people for a while first. Ty and Izzy both have to jump feet first into this Digimon thing and start acting like professionals, which is a place that they eventually got to in the original show, but they definitely didn't start out there. These kids felt like kids who already knew what Digimon were and were just going about their business as Digimon tamers. Isn't the right word, but I'm going to say Digimon tamers. There was none of that realistic kid character charm that the originals had. And rebooting the show, introducing us to a new version of the original cast already felt gimmicky. But watching this first episode, it really does feel like this isn't like Digimon Kai or something. This really is a completely different Digimon show that just happens to have the original characters slapped onto it for some reason. And I guarantee, I promise you, if this show didn't have the old characters in it, if this was just its own thing, like Digimon New Adventure, or Digimon Next Generation Adventure, or something. And it was its own thing, with its own cast of human characters and a bunch of new Digimon for us to get to know, with their own cool original designs, I'd be singing this show's praises, because it did a lot right, too. Like, tossing out those older storytelling conventions, as much as I love the drawn-out evolution sequences, part of that was apparently doing away with those, because when Agumon evolves into Greymon to fight against generic dumb villain Digimon, I don't even remember if we were told its name. I don't even remember what it looked like, it was so memorable. But when he evolves to fight it, the evolution happens in real time, and it looked very cool. I was very impressed by it. In fact, the animation quality in this was top-notch pretty much all around. There were a couple areas where you could see like crowd shots and stuff, they cut some corners, but it was fine. It was better than fine, in fact, most of the time. It looked very good. This is a very good-looking show. And if it were, again, a show with new characters who are supposed to be new people who I am not supposed to expect to react the same way these characters did in the original show to things, I'd like it. I would like it for all the things that it does well. And there was some character stuff I liked, don't get me wrong. Izzy is probably the only character who I would buy immediately taking to this whole Digimon thing. So when he started calling shots for Tai from the real world, while Tai's in the digital world with Agumon, I liked that. That worked for me very, very well. And Tai accessing his crest of courage to take himself to the digital world, because apparently the crests are built into the Digivices now for some reason, by jumping a turnstile so he can run in and try to help his mom and sister who are on a out-of-control train, even though there's nothing he can do about it. That was a very Tai move. That was the only time in this entire episode that Tai did something that I wholly buy he would have done in the early episodes of the original Adventure series. And it worked. It was a very great character moment. That does remind me, though, that I hate the way the new Digivices look. Like, they look like they're trying to look like the original ones, but they're just not trying enough, or they're trying too much. I haven't really decided yet, because the original Digivices have a very distinct look, and you can see kind of the same silhouette in the new Digivice, but at the very least they could have made it wider than it is tall, and kept the same overall basic shape that it has, to more evoke that iconic design. And they don't, and I hate it a lot, but that's beside the point. That was a great character moment for Tai, seeing Izzy take to coordinating stuff via his tech so quickly. That was a very cool character moment for him, and I bought it. I don't know what they're doing with Matt there at the end, riding on Garurumon, looking down at Tai menacingly. Like the two of them had a rivalry in the original show, but it almost feels like they're framing Matt as an enemy, and if they go that direction, I'm going to be very upset. But we'll see. I said I wasn't going to speculate, so I'm not going to speculate. End of the day, this feels like it was conceived as a different Digimon show, and then had the old characters slapped onto it, because nostalgia makes money, and because there was all those movies with those characters just recently. And if that's the case, I'm going to be real mad. Like, if it's confirmed to be the case, I'm going to be real mad. And I'm kind of mad anyway. Because let me put it this way. Okay? The story of this show is very obviously going to be very different than the story of the original Digimon. But the events of the sequels that I mentioned in my 2 cents on Digimon Adventure, Digimon Adventure 02, Digimon Adventure Tri, and the other one also, and the various OVAs that were also kind of sequels that I didn't mention in that video, beside the point, that overreaching, overarching, expansive continuity that takes place after the original adventure story ends. The events of those things were spurred by the events of Digimon Adventure, or at least some of them, anyway. So if the story of Adventure doesn't happen, then the stories of O2 and Tri, etc., also don't happen. Which means that these characters, even if they start out as something similar to the original Digimon Adventure characters, are not going to end up in the same place as those characters. So, the longer these characters continue to exist and move forward throughout this new series, the less reason there is going to be, thematically, storytelling-wise, for them to be the original adventure characters. You get what I'm saying? This show would just be so much better if it were the same show, but with a completely different cast. And that does, at the end of the day, round out to be my biggest issue with it. I still like Digimon, though, just as a concept, so I'm probably going to keep watching this show at least for a little while and see where it goes. See if it fixes any of these issues that I have with it. I'll keep you guys updated, I guess. Maybe even make it a semi-regular series, because I'm obviously very passionate about this. And it's not like this show is intended to replace the original, right? There's already a Digimon multiverse. The original Adventure and this version of Adventure can take place in different points across that multiverse simultaneously, right? I understand that. I'm not mad because of that. I'm mad because I think this is a wasted opportunity. This show, reusing the same cast of human and Digimon characters, has robbed me and every other fan of the opportunity to get to know a new cast of human and Digimon characters. That's primarily what annoys me about it. And then also that thing about it not feeling like the title Adventure is actually appropriate to it. But again, we'll see if that remains true. Anyway, what did you guys think of Digimon Adventure 2020 if you have seen the first and only episode of it? I don't think there will be a second episode up by the time I post this video. If there is, let me know. I don't know. It doesn't matter. What do you think of it so far either way? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below or over my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22 and I will talk to you guys later.